Hey class, this week we are talking a lot about ethical dilemmas that can happen in the workplace and practicum. And I actually had one come up pretty recently with the school. So I thought I would just share that. We had a client, my client, who was doing he was avoiding non-preferred tasks, and there's a lot of those at school, and it was kind of like an all-day situation where it was definitely crisis all day. That's how I can how I can phrase that. And the teacher decided to use a tactic that I thought was like shame based, and I didn't really appreciate that. But she wanted to have the client's younger brother come into the room and give him like a talk on appropriate behavior, which I feel like that was kind of a shame based approach, not a strength based approach, and that it wouldn't further the situation. It would just make the kid feel worse about himself. And in crisis, we know that that isn't a helpful tactic. To a certain extent, I've never really been in this situation before, so I didn't really know what to do. But I did know who I could contact once after the situation had happened, because it was kind of like boom, boom, boom. It like happened. But when the brother came in the room, I tried to switch it to an empowering perspective, like trying to have his brother be like, "Oh, hey, I believe in you," or like promote more like empowering things like, "Oh, these are your really good qualities. Let's see how we can incorporate these qualities into the school day." Stuff like that. So I kind of tried to do the best I could navigate that situation on my own. But as soon as the situation happened and after, it was done, and I feel like I did the best I could, I went and I called my CBRS manager, and they're able to immediately pick up. And so they were able to talk me through about like what to do with things in the future, and was actually really happy. He was happy that I advocated for my client, because it's a huge important part of our position. And later I did try to talk with the teacher about like what happens, how shame-based stuff isn't helpful, and the teacher said at that point that she did not care that he had been shamed. And so that was just an interesting thing, because we have to work with these teachers and we have to navigate these relationships as well. And so like maintaining good rapport with teachers is really important, especially since we're in the classroom all day. So it was it was definitely a struggle. And I feel like it specifically um violated some code of ethics from the NASW, because I don't feel like the dignity and worth of the person was being respected at the time. And it made me feel really bad. Once it had happened, I remember calling my manager and I was like, I felt really terrible. It made me cry because I didn't feel like it was a good situation for the client, and I couldn't imagine myself getting shamed like that. It made me just feel really icky. Um, and so, in a way, it's definitely, we are often walking in a gray area, because I need to be supportive of my client, but I also need to try not to undermine the school and navigate areas to like healthy coping skills and techniques, and helping even adults recognize that when we're frustrated with somebody who's like avoiding tasks and like having large emotional complications in class, it can be frustrating for them too. So like being in that middle ground and navigating all those feelings with everybody is it's a really challenging situation to be in. But I feel like that it was good, because the process after that, and that was to just have a training on it. And we were conveniently having our CBRS training the next day, so we were all able to kind of have a conversation about like ways to approach this. And we've all determined the best way to approach it would to be like to the teacher and the school behavioral specialist, because they have one who works just with the school only and does things school wide instead of just client individual wise. But having and being like, hey, do we think this is the best approach? And then maybe offering suggestions for other approaches just right off the bat, instead of feeling like we have to do what the school says, because we don't always have to do what the school says. And ultimately, the school is going to make their choices and they are going to do what they're going to do. But our voice can often influence the decision making process in the moment. And if one person voices direct concern in the moment, being like, hey, I'm not really sure that this is going to work out, what other ways can we try to work on this? it may have derailed it and the situation may not have even happened. So I wouldn't have had to feel the pressure of trying to change it to a strength-based perspective. It would have just been ended there. So I feel like my agency is actually really, really good to work with when it comes to these ethical dilemmas, and they're really good to talk with us about like better tactics or best techniques to use in the future.